Okay, here we'll be looking at the digestive system in man. We're looking at digestion in man. Digestion in man. Digestion is the process by which the body breaks down food into small and absorbable form. It is the process by which the body breaks down food into small and absorbable form. So, in digestion, the body breaks down food into small and absorbable form so that they can be absorbed into the bloodstream and then be utilized by the cell. So, for example, starch is a very large food organic matter, like your gari, the rice that we eat, they all contain starch. So, when starch cannot enter into the bloodstream, so it has to undergo digestion, it has to be broken down to give glucose. So it is the glucose that is then absorbed into the bloodstream. So glucose is the small, it is the absorbable form that is absorbed into the bloodstream, and that is what your cells will now use for metabolic activities. Also, proteins are broken down to form amino acids. So amino acids, they are the small form and absorbable form that can be absorbed into the bloodstream and then be used by the cells. Then fatty acids and glycerol, they are the end product of digestion of fats and oil. So digestion is all about the process by which the body breaks down food. So the foods are being broken down into small and absorbable form that are then taken into the bloodstream and then utilized by the cells for various metabolic activities. So it's very important that you should know that digestion involves mechanical and chemical processes. Mechanical in the sense that the large organic molecule is being smashed, is being crunched into small units. For example, if you put food in your mouth, you will chew it. So that process of breakdown is mechanical. And digestion also involves chemical processes by the action of enzymes. So it's very important that you should know that digestion involves mechanical and chemical processes and it occurs in the alimentary canal. So digestion occurs in the alimentary canal, also known as the digestive tract. So the alimentary canal is simply the long tubular structure where digestion and absorption of food occurs. So this long tube from the mouth down to the stomach, down to the small intestine, to the large intestine, and down to the anus is what is called the alimentary canal. So the alimentary canal is a long tubular structure where digestion and absorption of food occurs. And in man, the alimentary canal is said to be complete. This is very important. It is complete because it starts with the mouth and ends in the anus. The tubular structure where the digestion of food and absorption of food occurs, it starts with the mouth and ends in the anus, and that is why it is called a complete alimentary canal. So the alimentary canal of man is complete because it starts with the mouth and ends with the anus. So this is very important. So again, the alimentary canal is a long tubular structure where digestion and absorption of food occurs. So this long tube from the mouth down to the anus where the digestion and absorption of food occurs or take place is what is referred to as the alimentary canal. And remember, the other word for alimentary canal is the digestive tract. Tract simply means canal, a tube. Canal simply means a tract or a tube. So digestive tract, the canal where or the tube where digestion and absorption of food occurs. So let's start with the first part of the alimentary canal, which is the mouth. So in the mouth, digestion of food is mechanical and chemical. It is mechanical and chemical. So It is mechanical in the sense that in the mouth, food is chewed. So you chew large food molecules into, you chew them and break them into smaller particles before swallowing them. So that process of chewing is a form of mechanical digestion, mechanical breakdown. Also, digestion in the mouth can be chemical as well. Uh, in the mouth, the saliva contains an enzyme called ptyalin. So this enzyme converts starch, the starch that you eat, to maltose. So that process of converting starch to maltose is a process of digestion, and this process is chemical. It's chemical because it is enzymatic. So the mouth contains an enzyme in the saliva called ptyalin, and this ptyalin, the function is that it converts starch to maltose. So this is very important. This is very important. Then, after the food has been chewed, ptyalin has acted on the starch, converted into maltose. The food is then swallowed into the esophagus through the pharynx. So, from the mouth, the food passes through the pharynx down to the esophagus. And the main function of the esophagus is that it pushes down food to the stomach. So, this is the esophagus. This is the esophagus, and the pharynx is somewhere here as the pharynx. So after the food has been chewed in the mouth, it is swallowed through from the pharynx, it enters the esophagus. Then the esophagus pushes the food down to the stomach by peristalsis. So food is pushed down from the esophagus to the stomach through the process called peristalsis. It's a series of circular and longitudinal motion that pushes food from this tube down into the stomach. So in the stomach, the food is temporarily stored. So the stomach acts as a temporary storage of food for, let's say, about 2 to 4 hours. 2 to 4 hours. Food is being stored in the stomach. The entrance of the stomach is called the cardiac sphincter. So this entrance here is called the cardiac sphincter. So this is the cardiac sphincter. The entrance of the stomach is called the cardiac sphincter. Cardiac because it is closer to the region of the heart. Then the exit, which is this part, this is the stomach. So the exit, which is this part, is called the pyloric sphincter. So the entrance of the stomach is called the cardiac sphincter. There is a sphincter here that controls what goes into the stomach, and the pyloric sphincter is the exit. It is what controls what goes outside the stomach. So these two sphincters, they are very important. Entrance is called the cardiac sphincter, while the exit is called the pyloric sphincter. Then another thing that must be noted about the stomach is that the stomach contains the gastric gland that secretes the gastric juice. This gastric juice is a digestive juice. So, but first of all, let's look at the gastric gland. The gastric gland is made up of three basic cells, three basic type of cell. We have the parietal cell, and it is responsible for the production of hydrochloric acid. So this is very important. The gastric gland has three major types of cells. The first one is the parietal cell, and it is responsible for the secretion of hydrochloric acid. Then there is the Schiff cell. The other cell is called the Schiff cell, and it is responsible for the secretion of pepsinogen. This pepsinogen is an inactive enzyme. Inactive enzyme. It becomes activated when it comes in contact with hydrochloric acid. Then the other cell is the mucous neck cell that is responsible for the secretion of mucus. So pepsinogen, like I said, is an inactive enzyme. Is inactive. So once it comes in contact with hydrochloric acid, it becomes converted to pepsin. This is the active enzyme. So pepsinogen is inactive, pepsin is active. So what the pepsin does is that it converts protein to peptones. So the basic function is the enzymatic conversion of proteins to peptone. Then in the stomach as well, there is another enzyme called renin, and this enzyme is responsible for the coagulation of milk protein. So these two facts, they are very important. Pepsinogen is inactive. On contact with hydrochloric acid, it is converted to pepsin that then converts proteins to peptone. Then the other enzyme in the stomach is called renin that is responsible for the coagulation of milk protein. So the hydrochloric acid, pepsinogen, and the mucus is what makes up the gastric juice. The gastric juice. So the gastric juice is composed of the hydrochloric acid produced by the parietal cells, the pepsinogen produced by the chief cell, then the mucus produced by the mucous neck cell. Hydrochloric acid, pepsinogen, and the mucus, they are what makes up the gastric juice. Very important. So the first component of the gastric juice that I would want to talk about is the hydrochloric acid. So, like we've explained before, hydrochloric acid is produced by the parietal cells of the gastric gland. It is produced by the parietal cells of the gastric gland. The major function of the hydrochloric acid is that it converts pepsinogen to pepsin. Pepsinogen is an inactive enzyme. It does not carry out any function, but when it comes in contact with hydrochloric acid, it is converted to pepsin. And this pepsin is responsible for conversion of proteins to peptones. So very important. Pepsin is responsible for the conversion of proteins to peptones. So proteins to peptones. That's the function of the pepsin. Then another function of the hydrochloric acid is that it stops the action of bacteria in food. So bacteria that accompanies food, once they are eaten in the mouth, swallowed, and then taken to the stomach, in the stomach their actions are stopped. So the hydrochloric acid in the stomach help to carry out this function. It stops the action of bacteria in food. So these are the two basic functions of the hydrochloric acid in the stomach. Then the other thing there is the mucous cells or the mucus. So the mucus is produced by the mucous neck cell and it forms a layer over the stomach. So if you look at the stomach, there are mucus around the inner part of the stomach. So the mucus forms a layer over the stomach. So this in yellow is called the mucus. So it forms a layer over the stomach, and its main function is that it protects the stomach from attack by hydrochloric acid. Remember, hydrochloric acid is produced by the parietal cells. So, and hydrochloric acid is a very corrosive acid. So to prevent its action from, or to prevent it from corroding the wall of the stomach, the mucous cell is being secreted. So the mucous cell is to protect the wall of the stomach from the action of hydrochloric acid. So if by any chance mucus is not being produced or is not being produced in an adequate amount, the hydrochloric acid can seep to the wall of the stomach and corrode it. So when the hydrochloric acid attacks the wall of the stomach, that will lead to gastric ulcer. So gastric ulcer is as a result of the hydrochloric acid corroding the wall of the stomach, and that is basically due to inadequate production of mucus by the mucous neck cell. So once food has been digested inside the stomach, the partially digested food is called the chyme, and this chyme is then passed from the stomach through this pyloric sphincter into the small intestine. So the next part of the alimentary canal we're going to look at is the small intestine. So just a quick recap, the stomach acts as a temporary storage for food. The entrance of the stomach, like we've said before, is called the cardiac sphincter. The entrance of the stomach here is called the cardiac sphincter, while the exit is called the pyloric sphincter, and that the stomach contains gastric gland that secretes gastric juice. And the gastric juices are basically made up of the hydrochloric acid, pepsinogen, and mucus. So that is that about the stomach. So in the next video, we'll look at the small intestine.